What is up, everybody? As the calendar moves past July 4th, it is now officially fantasy football season. Although my guest here joining me today, my co-host, I don't know why I said guest, Laquan Jones of the NFL Network, and of course the Sick Podcast Rams. Dude, how you doing? Your Scott Fishbowl thing has already started, yeah?
Yeah, man, we're all done, man. The Vegas draft was insane, man. I mean, how could you ask for a better setup? A draft board, friends, pool, some adult drinks, and just enjoying the vibes out there in Vegas, bro.
And with our friends at Circa Las Vegas, and of course, Dave Rossborough joined us a couple of weeks ago. But listen, for many of us, we're just getting started with our draft prep. So we are going to kick off a full week of fantasy draft previews. And to do that, Stammy, let's go ahead and start the show.
Welcome to our Fantasy Island.
All right. Welcome to a very special edition, the fantasy football edition of the Sick Podcast, both with Laquan Jones and we're Adam Rank. And so very excited to get started today. Our first one right out of the gate, we're going to start talking about quarterbacks. And I'm sorry, just to make this easier, I just put out my rankings. You can nitpick things. You can tell me where I'm wrong. I'm happy with that. But instead of sitting here and be like, let's collab, I'm just going to give you mine. And you can tell me that I'm full of it.
That's fine. I peeked at the rundown, and you have a guy at 6 that, it just makes me so excited that we're on the same page here. So,
oh my gosh,
I'm actually good up until 6.
Okay, well, that's cool. Listen, that's a good point of it. I do want to say real quick, though, just as for a friend of mine. So, actually, the first thing I want to say is, number one, before anybody gets started on any draft, now, obviously, I'm going to be doing the Scott Fishbowl LA on July, Saturday, the 11th, the 12th, whatever it is. I don't know. Once you get into this 4th of July, so the 5th, so it'll be the 12th. Yeah, so July 12th. So, actually, if you're listening to this after July 12th, I will have already started my draft. The most important thing that I cannot stress enough to people whenever they have questions about like, hey, should I do this? Should I do that? I'm like, what is your scoring system? I wish there was one. I wish there was universal scoring. I wish, and the Scott Fishbowl is like so convoluted now with like, hey, points per half point per touch. Or you're like, oh God, this is going to be so crazy. But at the same time, it is very important to just take a half hour to sit here. And more importantly, like you don't even need you can just print out a list. This isn't like back in the day when you had to go out and study stuff. You had to print out a list and have everything going. So let's start here. Let's say it's a single quarterback league and it's 4 points for passing touchdown. What is your strategy with the quarterback position?
Well, first of all, I hate that it's 4 points, man.
I hate it too.
That should be the standard. Like, what are we doing? Like, is it 99 again, man? Look, at the end of the day, if it's 4 points, I'm looking for the mobilizers. I'm looking for the guys that are good with their feet. Because if I'm going to get gypped on my touchdowns, then I got to get a guy that's going to get it in with his feet. You know what I mean? So it's like, all right, well, 4 points for passing touchdowns. It's like, at the end of the day, you might end up with a Brock Purdy who may be on the decline. Those touchdowns have dropped significantly from, the 2023 season to the 24 season. So it's like, all right, so now he's out of the bag. Jared Goff, there's questions there in Detroit. Those touchdowns may come down back to earth. He might be a little humbled this season. So those guys I'm avoiding because in 6 points, those guys can be a little bit more valuable, but these guys don't move out of the pocket. So 4 point touchdowns in one quarterback leagues, I need the mobile guys on my side.
100%. And it is a big difference because when you see when people talk about who is the quarterback one last year, it's like, well, what was the league? What was the standing?
Yeah.
Because Joe Burrow threw every touchdown. It felt like he threw so many touchdowns. So those quarterbacks are much more valuable. And it's also easier to bypass a quarterback when it's 6 point leagues. It's actually the guys who don't get that. Like last year, I was so in on CJ Stroud, but I play in a league that has 6 points for passing touchdowns, and it didn't quite work out as well as I would have liked that to have, but it's just one of those things. So know your scoring settings. I got to ask a question though. A friend of mine, he's got a league where it's 6 points for passing touchdowns. He has a keeper question, Garrett Wilson in the 14th or Jaden Daniels in the 7th. And I told him if it's 6 points for passing touchdowns, you can throw Jaden Daniels back.
Yeah. Is it super flex though? That's another question because if it's super flex, that 7th round value on Jaden Daniels is incredible. Like, oh my God, like you could lock up a quarterback in those first 2 rounds and come away with whoever you want, like a guy that could be stable in the pocket that have that high touchdown upside, Joe Burrow, for example. But if I get to keep in a super flex Jaden Daniels in 7th round, that's a lock. That's a lock right there. But I do like Garrett Wilson in the 14th round. There is some value there, obviously, getting a wide receiver 1 of his team, which could posture to be this wide receiver 1 that we have going in the 1st round in previous drafts. But I do think the league setting matters here. Again, we go back to that. If it's 1 quarterback league, then I might side with the Garrett Wilson in the 14th round. But if it's super flex, that value on Jaden Daniels in the 7th round is chef kiss, man.
Yeah, and I don't know what your strategy was in the Scott Fish Bowl, which is a super flex league. Well, it's a super flex on a flex league. I'm taking quarterbacks I'm taking 1 quarterback with my first pick, but then realizing like, well, when I end up with JJ McCarthy late in the 10th round, it'll be fine. Yeah. One of those things. So we like Jaden Daniels this year. I mean, as a quarterback, it's hard to be better than he was last season. What do you think about Jaden Daniels going into this year?
See, last year was such a phenomenon. Like, it was so great to watch him play and make the big plays and go out there and have him on your fantasy rosters. And he's putting up all these points with his legs through the air. And like, he's just so accurate in his placement of the ball. Like, the ceiling, you know, it could be risen a little higher this season, being that you add in Deebo Samuel. These touches that Deebo can get are going to be obviously designed. They're going to be manufactured for him to be the guy to be more explosive. And I think when we look at that run game last season, I mean, with Austin Eckler and Brian Robinson Jr., it was okay, you know, but luckily they had Jaden Daniels there to add that pop, to add that explosiveness to that offense. And now when you add a guy like Deebo, which hopefully we're not getting thick Deebo, we're getting normal size, no hamburger Deebo, no beer belly gut, you know, Deebo, where he is still that explosive guy, a wide receiver that has that running back mentality to be able to break tackles, be elusive and stuff. So the touchdowns can rise even higher for Jaden Daniels. So I'm in on him again this season and a lot of my drafts this summer based on just like, you're getting a guy that's mobile, you're getting a guy that takes care of the ball, you're getting a guy where the system is made around him and he has that mobile upside. It's like you cannot lose going with Jaden Daniels. He could possibly be the QB1. I'm gonna say it. It might be over Lamar. It might be over Josh Allen. It might be a situation where Jaden Daniels, with more weapons around him and more fluidity, with, you know, Cliff Kingsbury not falling off the cliff, you know, how he usually did in Arizona, but more so looking at this offense, it just shows the arrow pointing up for Jaden Daniels in the Commanders this season.
I hear everything that you're saying, but I'm just gonna be like, no. No, it's fine. No, it's totally cool. I get it. And it is one of those things that he's amazing and I will not take away from anything that he did. I thought he was a good player coming out of college. I liked him at Arizona State, lost touch with him in LSU, as I tend to do, but it's fine. You know, it's just one of those things where, is it sustainable? Is this a sustainable thing for Jaden Daniels now that everybody has had a full year? And it's not about his health, because people are like, I'm not going to predict injuries or do anything like that. However, now when we saw Deebo, number one, I think this shows the difference between Five Guys and In-N-Out Burger. When Deebo was sitting in California eating In-N-Out Burger, he was fine. He wasn't fat. He goes to Five Guy. He goes to Washington for 4 weeks of eating Five Guys, and he's overweight. So I think we've ended the burger debate once and for all. But I think if Deebo will go back, this is the thing that and this is getting into the minutia. Like, if Deebo would embrace the role that he had early on in his 49ers career, where he was running the football, and he kind of got away, and they got away from that. Well, CMC will help too. But if they go back to allowing him, and it just takes a couple, and if he starts eating into Jaden Daniels' rushing touchdowns, that could be a problem. However, I will say this: every year I go out and I say, Jalen Hurts cannot rush for 15 touchdowns. He's going to regress so much. And then he doesn't. He exceeds it. So then I say go. If you like Jaden Daniels, have no fear. I wouldn't fear injuries. I wouldn't fear regression. He's probably going to be fine. I do got to ask, but this is the Bears. Well, I know this is going on my Bears platform. So before we get into the list, I do want to ask you real quick about Caleb Williams. Yeah, I'm probably way more optimistic than a lot of people outside of the Bears fans who will be joining us here and commenting. Now I see what you were excited about. And I think Caleb is going to have a monster season. I really do. I think that early on, it's going to be a struggle. And a couple of weeks into it, people are going to be like, oh, I don't know. And then somewhere around week 4 or 5, once he really gets comfortable in this offense, he's going to take off. I love Caleb Williams. Where do you see him this season?
Caleb has great opportunity to put all the doubters, all the haters to bed. Because honestly, with Ben Johnson on the sticks, how can he lose? Because we saw last year what he displayed. Great plays. We saw the flashes. And the most important thing about Caleb last year, this is among like the elites. Like when we talk about the Aaron Rodgers, the Drew Breeses, he took care of the ball. He didn't turn it over. He had one of the most throwaway plays in last season. So you're looking at a guy that has the air yards, which he finished second in, by the way. He wants to air it out. You bring in a mind like Ben Johnson to get his hands on Caleb Williams. We saw what he did with a Jared Goff. I'm sorry. I'm still a very bitter Rams fan here. But at the end of the day, you saw what he was able to do with Jared Goff. Now we're looking at Caleb where he has those core qualities to be an elite quarterback in this league where he's mobile, where he's able to throw the long ball, tight windows. He's able to do everything you want. He has the qualities of a Josh Allen with his arm strength. He has the qualities of pocket awareness with the Patrick Mahomes. And then he has Seahawks vintage Russell Wilson ability to move in and out of that pocket to make the play, extend the play. So with DJ Moore and with Rome Odunze, which I'm highly on this season, there's no way he can lose. This is without me even adding the additions of the rookies with Burden and Colston Loveland. So we're already looking at the core pieces that he is surrounded by. I know last year we got all excited, Rank. I was too, with Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, and DJ Moore. It didn't work out because you guys didn't have the tools and the coaching staff to go out there to execute what we all are expecting from Caleb. So I am highly in on Caleb. And a lot of super flex leagues, I'm comfortable with him as my QB1 just based on who the offensive mind is out there under Ben Johnson.
No, I love that. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I again, as far as, super flex leagues, even in traditional fantasy football leagues, one quarterback leagues, I would be comfortable if Caleb Williams ends up being my quarterback. However, in a lot of the drafts that I do, people love to draft him early because they think that they're tweaking it to me, and I'll allow them to do that. Like, it's fine.
Yeah.
And it's usually I had a friend last year who's like, "Oh, it's trade bait." And he's like, "Dude, I'm not trading for a quarterback. Like, I can, like, when we're sitting here and we're doing the tiers, even when you get deep into these tiers, and you're like, you know what? If I ended up with this guy, I'm sure there are weeks that he's going to win it, and you can start streaming quarterbacks, and you'll see a lot of that. And without further ado, we'll start getting into this. I know we'll probably have a little bit of a disagreement, and I'll just start off with tier 1 and what we usually do. And what we do when we put it out in tiers, it means that you can pretty much have any of these guys, and it's not gonna hurt you. Like, it's not like if you want Jalen Hurts over Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson over Josh, like, fine. I think all three of these guys, you're going to be good. I guess for me, the question is, we were just talking about Jaden Daniels. Would you have Jaden Daniels in tier 1 here?
I would. Okay. I would, only because I suspect that his passing touchdowns will increase. Like, I think he'll get in that 30 park. He'll be able to have 700 rushing yards. This is all on the table for these guys, except for Jalen Hurts throwing, barely, 3,000 yards last season. If not, he didn't. But more so looking at the scoring opportunities. Are these guys on offenses that have that high power offense that can create all these scoring opportunities? And when they get into striking zone, are these guys efficient, or are these guys able to hit that red zone and hit that touchdown? So, yeah, I would definitely put him at the number 4 spot, being that the tush push is broken and it will be used and abused. So Hurts obviously got that 3 spot locked.
Yeah, and again, I'm being a hater probably, and although they're going to come in and be like, I've been wrong. Like, I've literally said for the last at least 2 years that Jalen Hurts rushing touchdowns are going to regress. They're not. So similarly, when I'm talking about Jaden Daniels regressing, that's not guaranteed because he's a mature quarterback. He's older. I mean, a lot of people forget that when Jaden Daniels was a freshman at Arizona State, his number 1 wide receiver was Brandon Ayuk. He played college, and Brandon Ayuk feels like he's been in the NFL for a decade. So it is one of those things. So if you want to put Jaden Daniels in, again, I'm not going to tell you who not to draft or whatever. I just have those 3 guys as the most elite. I typically won't end up with them because I'm not willing to pay the price in a single quarterback league for where it is. Now, we'll move on to tier 2. And this is where I think that, as strange as it is, I almost wanted to break this up a little bit because it feels like at times, tier 2, you can really wait on some of these guys. And tier 3 is going to be bananas. I got Joe Burrow up there. I got Jaden Daniels. And again, if you prefer Jaden Daniels over Joe Burrow, I'm not sitting here arguing with you. Bo Nix, Patrick Mahomes. I do have Caleb Williams as a tier 2 guy. But again, if you're playing in a league without a lot of Chicago Bear fans, you could probably wait on him because people still feel like he's not good, which is fine. Use that to your advantage. When you go to your fantasy draft, and if you're the lone Bears fan, I don't have this often, but if you're the lone Bears fan and people want to start talking S on Caleb Williams, encourage it. You're like, yeah, you're probably right. And then let them talk about Caleb Williams. And so nobody drafts him and you can wait 21. Don't make the mistake, though, because even if everybody's got a quarterback, somebody will try to snipe him. So you can't wait forever, but you can probably buy yourself a round or two waiting for him.
I'm the guy in the draft room, though, that's saying, oh, this guy sucks. And then I'll draft him two rounds later. That's just
Is that what you're doing? Are you doing that with Bo Nix? Because I know, like you and I know last year I was big on Bo Nix. Love Bo Nix. And again, I don't think that a lot of people will have him in this second tier, but I think we're simpatico on Bo Nix.
Yes, we are the same, and that's exactly where I have him ranked, and it's exactly how I have it above Patrick Mahomes. Now, with Bo Nix, a lot of folks they look at him and he's not exciting. He's not the Jaden Daniels. He's not the Caleb Williams. Like it's one of those things where it's like, okay, that's fine. Let's keep him under there. Let's have that conversation, and let's not pump him up. But the opportunity that Bo Nix has this season to be top 6 again, to be a quarterback that you can get that has that rushing upside, that you're waiting on a discount. You don't have to pay the Hurts price. You don't have to play the Jaden Daniels price. You could literally wait until the middle of those drafts where you make the rest of your roster solid at the running back, tight end, wide receiver, whatever the case may be. You sit there and wait for Bo Nix that has that QB1 upside where he's giving you the rushing upside. He had 430 rushing yards last season behind one of the best offensive lines out there. So it wasn't like he was out there running for his life like a Drake May or a Caleb Williams. These are rushes that he's floating in and out of that pocket and taking off because he has the opportunity, he has the ability. So it's like you're sitting with a guy under Sean Payton right now where he's like, this is my guy. That marriage is strong. We saw them arguing on the sideline. That's where they basically made up and like, all right, we're gonna rock this thing and go to the playoffs. Like this is this type of situation you're sitting in. And with the additions rank with RJ Harvey, Pat Bryan, Evan Ingram, this just makes this offense even stronger. And he did that last season without those guys. He did that with a bunch of nobodies in that backfield. Like, we couldn't even really name anyone behind Javonte Williams that was reliable. Like, Audra Estime was pumped up by Sean Payton, which he's a huge liar rank. But then, you know, he came in, and then the next game, he didn't touch the ball. Like, we don't even know where he went. So I understand the ups and downs of this Denver Broncos offense, but that is what's going to be the main talk about your draft leagues this summer, about guys talking about Bo Nix. Like, Bo Nix, he's okay. Like, that's what you will hear amongst the fantasy streets. He's okay. Yeah. You're crazy to think that.
Yeah, let people talk about it. And two, as I'm sitting here looking at these at the tiers, you know, at some point it might behoove you to put Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels into the top tier. As I'm working through this, you know, this is one of the great things about fantasy football is that you're always tinkering, you're always working through this. I would say the top 5 guys on this list will be the top 5 quarterbacks off the board. In any order. And it's fine, and allow that to happen. And then sit here and be pretty comfortable with allowing yourself the opportunity to get Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, or Patrick Mahomes. A lot of people will be sleeping on Patrick Mahomes this year. Allow them to do that. Be like, yeah, Mahomes sucks now. Like, Travis Kelce's garbage. Like, let people do that. If I end up leaving a league where I waited on a quarterback and I was waiting super deep and I got into the 6th, 7th, 8th, probably like the 8th round or something. The top 5, once the top 5 quarterbacks go, I think everybody's hitting the brakes. Everybody's waiting. And everybody's like, okay, now all things being equal, there's really not a rush to go out there and grab one of these other 3 guys. And for a lot of people too, Caleb and Bo might not even make somebody's tier too. So you really can get a steep discount because there's going to be some more recognizable names in tier 3. And why don't we go ahead and bring up tier 3? Because, by the way, I agree with everything of Bo Nix.
Let's go.
And I think a lot of people were kind of shocked last year that he runs as well as he did. But like the scouting report was Bo Nix and Drew Brees was actually a pretty athletic quarterback. I always pushed back on this thing about like he's an athletic Drew Brees. I'm like, Drew Brees is shorter than me and can dunk a basketball. Like he was an athletic guy.
Athletic guy, man.
He really was. But again, when you look at tier 3, also a lot of interesting names here because Baker Mayfield, the only reason that I have Baker Mayfield slotted in tier 3 is because Dave Canales is gone from 2 years ago. Liam Cohen is gone. And he keeps playing well. So again, I don't want to get into this thing where like, well, he has to regress. I want to believe in Baker Mayfield, but we still have to make these rankings. Kyler Murray needs to step. Like Kyler Murray is strong on promise. We haven't seen it. Justin Herbert, if the Chargers threw the ball more, I would love it. Our guy Justin Fields, Drake May, Brock Purdy. We have Dak Prescott, CJ Stroud, and of course your guy Matthew Stafford. I stuck him in there in tier 3.
I appreciate that.
Well, let's talk about Matthew Stafford.
Okay.
What do we expect? What do we expect out of the Rams? As I'm doing this, and again, any of these guys, so we have Matthew Stafford at 17, Baker Mayfield's at 9. But the beauty of the tiers is that if you wanted to take Matthew Stafford over any of these guys, I'd be like, that makes sense. I don't hate it. And I think that with the way the Rams are constructed right now, really fortified the running game, which is bad for our guy Kyron Williams, but fortified the running game. And then you have Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams. And based on what Cooper Kupp was last year, Devontae Adams has to be seen as an upgrade. And I think Matthew Stafford is a really sneaky option this year.
Absolutely. And I think people are sleeping on the opportunity here. In 2021, when he first landed, he finished QB6 that season for the reason why we were getting more touchdowns in the red zone, the more of the striking area where we're able to have Cooper Kupp be the Triple Crown winner, to be the elite, and then be able to go out there and dish it out and find other guys to be relevant. And I look at that season that Matthew Stafford had that ability to find the end zone more times than not. You add in a freaking Devontae Adams, you add in Puka Nacua, like you have two speed demons on the perimeter right now. You have guys that are going to be able to break tackles, get loose. I mean, Devontae Adams on the Jets last season still looked like a guy that can be in that Packers uniform many, many years ago, where he was still being elite. He was dominant. He's the alpha. Now you add in Puka Nacua, who's the Yak King. You cannot tackle this guy. If you think you're going to tackle him off the first contact, you're losing your mind. You're going to be left behind because he's going to drag you. And this is what Matthew Stafford has at the helm. When we look at the football IQ of this guy, out of this tier 3, when we put real life situations, he's the only one with a ring. He's the only one that can go out there and with broken ribs or a banged up shoulder or a pinched neck or whatever the case may be. The injury is there. He's still going to go out there and give you 110%. For fantasy, we're still looking at this offense. Sean McVay basically dedicated this entire offseason for versatility, to change things up. That's why you see a Jarquez Hunter. That's why you see Terrence Ferguson. You might see some more 12 personnel. There's going to be a lot of disguise of this offense, and you need a quarterback that has that football IQ that can execute this at a high level, because we've seen this before. Last season, to me, was kind of like we were limping. Like the last 2 seasons, there's no other quarterback on this list, tier 1, tier 2, that could be in the situation he was in to be able to win 10 games, to go to the playoffs and win a game, you know? So it's like one of those situations in fantasy, like keep Matthew Stafford name in the fantasy streets low. We're going to get him. We're going to get him as a valuable hidden gem in the QB1 in that trash can, to be able to go out there and put up 18 to plus fantasy points every single Sunday.
It is one of those things that's so tough for me, where I have to balance my dislike for Clayton Kershaw with how much I like Matthew Stafford. Like it's a weird, it doesn't make sense. Like I co-hosted the Jim Rome After Hour with my friend Brian Weber, who doesn't like Kershaw or Stafford. And I'm like, that makes it so much easier for you. Like it's just, they're a package deal. They'll both probably have their statues together somewhere in Los Angeles, which is fine. I do like Stafford a lot, and I like this Rams offense a lot, and I believe that the Rams are going to end up winning the NFC West. My only pushback, and did they win it last? No, Seattle. Wait, they won it? Wait.
No,
yeah?
we won it.
You won it last year. Yeah, okay, so that's fine. That's not the hottest of takes. I knew they were a playoff team. they actually looked the best against Philadelphia as opposed to anybody that Philadelphia ran into in the playoffs. I knew they made the playoffs, but I'm like, wait, who would have won the division? It wasn't Arizona. Definitely not San Francisco. Seattle didn't make the playoffs, right? Seattle didn't make it. No? 7 teams is too many to keep track of. And by the way, fantasy's over, and the Bears aren't in it, so I don't care. There you go. I do love. I like Stafford. This is not like trying to take away from Matthew Stafford. The only fear I have, and again, we're getting too nuanced for this. Yeah. Like opportunity is going to be there. High scoring offense with a quarterback who is good. Okay, that's fine. I do know that there's going to be games where he throws for 240 and a single touchdown, and they rush for 3 touchdowns, and you're like, maybe. That is the thing. There's a lot of CJ Stroud last year, and a lot of those kind of things where you're like, oh, you run the ball too much. Sean McVay loves to run the ball. I knew when he first started, I need to go back and double check these numbers because when he first started, early in his career, him and Belichick love running inside the 5-yard line. Those were the two guys, and you're like, but I think it's evolved a little bit over the last number of years, but still not enough to keep me off of it because I still think it's pretty good. And I love this tier. And these, I look at these quarterbacks, and these always seem to be the quarterbacks I end up with. Herbo, I dig. I want to talk about Justin Fields, though, because
let's do it.
I'm putting a lot of faith in this. And honestly, last season, I thought the Pittsburgh Steelers made a mistake of going and pulling him and going with Russell Wilson. I thought that was a huge error on their part. I think that's one of the reasons why they struggled and faltered down the stretch. I think Justin Fields now getting a full opportunity with the New York Jets, with Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall. Regardless of what Aaron Rodgers thinks, I think Breece Hall is a good running back. I think Justin Fields could be a sneaky play here.
I agree. And I think he's being drafted as like the QB 10 right now in best ball leagues. And I feel like you're taking a gamble, but it's a good gamble. You're looking at the situation where he doesn't have somebody over his back looking for his job. They invested in him for 2 years, and it's kind of big money. And it's one of those things like the Steelers, they were put in a situation where they had 2 quarterbacks that were capable, but you got Arthur Smith, the fantasy streets boogeyman, trying to build 2 playbooks, So it's like one of those things now. Justin Fields has his feet under him as the QB1, and that rushing upside, there's not many quarterbacks out there other than Lamar Jackson that could put 1,000 yards on the ground. You know what I mean? So I'm obviously going to chase that upside as well. And being that, I feel as though no diss to the Bears out there in Chicago, but he's put in probably the best situation from a running back and a wide receiver 1 situation he's had in his entire career. So I feel like it's kind of a situation that you're going to accept that he's not going to go out there and throw for 4,000 yards, but he's going to have a ton of rushing yards. He's going to have a ton of rushing opportunities. Breece Hall might come down, obviously with his rushing touchdowns, but you're still looking at a solid quarterback that can go out there and have that ceiling to put up 20 points every Sunday for you. So I'm looking at Justin Fields as a guy, like if I miss out, on the Caleb Williams and he goes too high, or Bo Nix, Justin Fields is just a valuable QB1 there as well, because we know he has that top 5 upside.
No, and I would push back. I think DJ Moore is better than Garrett Wilson. But whatever, listen. We can sit here and have that conversation during the wide receiver segment here coming up this week.
Yeah,
I do. Again, I don't think it's disrespectful to say that the Bears, the timing with the Bears never worked out, and I think that's fair to say. And again, I know that there are still wars going on in the fantasy streets about, or the Bears Twitter and all the social media. What about it just didn't work out. The timing was wrong. It didn't work out. If I'd have been sitting behind Tiffany Amber Thiessen in a different part of my life than when I did, who knows? Maybe that's a story for another day. We do. What about Dak Prescott? If I got to tell you that story at some point. But Dak Prescott at number 15. Again, we're doing this. If Dak Prescott, if I put him at 9 or I put him at 15, again, to me, it makes no difference. You got to assign a number to a guy at some point. You're going to have to make a decision. But if for whatever reason, if I ended up with Dak Prescott as my QB, even if my QB1, I'm not necessarily hating it, although I would prefer some other guys. But I think Dak Prescott really has an opportunity to rebound with CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens and no real threat at the running back position.
Listen, and folks got to understand, like, there's always going to be a gamble with health when it comes with Dak and any other player out there, but like with Dak, at least we know like 4,500 yards are on the table, 30 plus touchdowns are on the table when he's fully healthy. And he did all this without having a reliable wide receiver too outside of CD Lamb. So now you add in George Pickens, a guy that can stretch the field with a catch radius out of the gym. You're getting CD Lamb where you don't have to constantly keep using him deep downfield. He could be your short yardage guy, quick slants, and get the first down to keep the chains moving. You're giving Dak a dynamic he hasn't had, I would say, in his entire career. When you look at Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup, that one too, where Gallup, there was times he was looking like the one, and Amari Cooper was on the decline. So there's never been right timing where he's had a wide receiver 1 and a wide receiver 2 at their peaks, and the talent is there for this offense to go out there, even though the run game is mid, I'll be nice, it's mid-tier, but Dak has 2 wide receivers now that he could feed and are reliable. And again, I said he's been a guy that can have 4,500 yards and 30 plus touchdowns when healthy. That's just the gamble of like, is he going to be healthy? Is he going to be able to stay upright? Which is the gamble that I'm willing to pay in these drafts.
It's just one of those things where it would not shock me if Dak Prescott has a season similar to what Joe Burrow did last year, where he's just constantly throwing the football. They're behind in all these games. They have the Bengals have a better running attack, so that's a little bit different, but with Chase Brown. But I really do think that he's going to end up with the most pass. He's going to be that guy who ends up, assuming he's healthy, the most.
Now, Rank, he was a top 3 fantasy quarterback just 2 years ago, 2023. So it's like people forget like what's on the table. Like it's always like Dak, okay, he's great, like okay, but no, for fantasy, I'm waiting in so many rounds later to get a Dak Prescott as my QB1. I am smashing his ADP right now to just be out of the water. Like him at 15 here, again, we're talking tiers. I can honestly put him at the top above Baker Mayfield and call it a day.
That's what I'm saying. 100%. I could put him at 9, and I would be fine with it. As a matter of fact, I feel it's almost disrespectful to not do that. And again, just trying to assign the point. Again, think of it in the tiers. And listen, a lot of times for me, I end up with tier 3 quarterbacks. Like that's just the way that I'm drafting, or depending on the league, especially if it's a 4-point or whatever it is. And again, I'll be comfortable. And there'll be leagues where I end up with Baker. There'll be leagues where I end up with Dak or Justin Fields, maybe even Drake May. I feel like having Drake May ahead of Dak, that's a little disrespectful. If I had to do it over, if I was in the draft queue right now, I would probably be picking Dak Prescott over Drake May. But you know what? That's the beauty of this, and this is why it's a living document. And I'm never going to be beholden to like, hey, you said Dak over Drake. Like it's the same tier. Like Dak over, as you said, Baker Mayfield or Kyler Murray. Like Kyler Murray brings the same set of issues as Dak Prescott does with like availability. Oh God, we've never. I feel like Kyler Murray is the Mandela effect of the NFL fantasy quarterbacks. Like, was he ever good? Or am I mad? Like, was he good? Like, we always assume that Kyler Murray was a good fantasy quarterback at some point. And I'm like, was he? Yeah. Because I don't remember having him.
I think people have that. They have that like reaction, like, was he good? But they still put him in the top 10 just 100%. Based on the rushing upside. Like, I get it, but for him to go publicly and vow that he's going to run more, I get the hype. But you should have been running more. You're 2 years removed from the injury. Last season was the most rushing yards we've seen from him since that 2020 season where he had like 700, 800 yards. So it's like, this should be already known in your game. This should what makes you more dangerous. And I think my biggest issue with Kyler is him not being able to connect with his wide receiver 1. And that is what's keeping him and capping him from breaking that ceiling of where he's at, is getting your wide receiver 1 established as the real threat. Trey McBride's great. He's cool, but he didn't have any touchdowns last season. So where did they go? Like Marvin Harrison had 8 touchdowns quietly, but less than 1,000 yards. So there's a disconnect there between Kyler and that offense.
And his completion percentage and his passer rating and all that stuff, when he was targeting players other than Marvin Harrison, was through the roof. Was amazing. Dortch. Was Wilson there? Yeah. And when he forced the ball to Marvin Harrison, that's when his numbers went down. It's so insane to me. that it keeps doing that. So I'm ducking off screen. I got to make sure. I got to keep my tears up. Okay. Tier 4. This will be fun because everybody's like, hey, I think you forgot Jordan Love. No, I didn't forget Jordan Love.
You didn't forget Jordan Love.
Listen, again, these are capable quarterbacks. Jordan Love, JJ McCarthy, who I've seen like straight football people, like just gridiron talk saying JJ McCarthy was a top 12 quarterback in the NFL already, like without throwing a single pass. Fair enough, whatever. Trevor Lawrence, Sam Darnold, Bryce Young, and then your guy, Jared Goff, Cam Ward. Got to put Cam Ward above Tua. But again, like it doesn't matter at this level, at this tier. And again, like if you ended up with a tier 4 quarterback, you're going to be fine. I don't know. I don't think a lot of Jordan Love, and I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about him. The one guy I'm really intrigued by here is JJ McCarthy, because based on what guys like Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, and Kevin O'Connell have done with quarterbacks, any quarterback, JJ McCarthy at least seems to have a pretty comfortable floor.
He does. And I agree because he's under KOC. With KOC on the sticks, we've seen Sam Darnold resurge his entire career to go get the bag in Seattle. And like, I'm on that wave of like saying like JJ McCarthy can be a top 12, but I'm not drafting him as if he is a top 12. So I'm letting him fall to my lap to figure out what I could do with him. Like he wouldn't be a guy that, you're taking in the mid rounds. You're not taking him in round 6 through 9. He's a guy that's going to live outside that 10th round where you can make the decision. Do you want to bring him on as a QB2? Or if you're doing super fade of like quarterbacks and want to just roll the dice on him, you're still sitting fine because he has that top 12 ceiling. And the reason why: Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson. Look, the list goes on. Aaron Jones, you have Jordan Mason. Dear God, how can we forget about him? That run game is solid. It's the most solid it's been in a very long time. So you're looking at everything that's around him. You're looking at who's on the sticks, calling the plays and doing et cetera. And make sure, JJ stays healthy. It's like one of those things. I can take that gamble. I could take him because, again, he was drafted very high, a lot of investment on him. And one of the two qualities he has is accuracy, and he's kind of semi-mobile, moving in and out of that pocket. And we see Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, all thriving as guys that can move around in that pocket. This is the direction where these young quarterbacks are coming in and being able to expand and basically blow up in year one. This is basically year one for JJ, where I think he might be on that same course. So again, I like everything that's around him. So I'm not a guy that's going to shy away from him just because he's coming back from injury or he hasn't played NFL football.
No, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think the best point that you made there was there's no need to take him as your quarterback one. Like it is a little bit too much of a risk for me. However, if you were sitting there and you took a tier 3 quarterback and you took Kyler Murray or Dak Prescott, CJ Stroud, or anybody else, Brock Purdy, who was in that tier. Although Brock Purdy, you're almost like you're drafting the same guy. Yeah. But if you have a quarterback that you don't necessarily feel, even if you do, and he continues to fall in drafts, and again, if you're playing in a 12-team league with one starting quarterback, there's a good chance that JJ McCarthy doesn't get drafted at all. Like people will just be like, we'll wait and see. I could always pick him up on the waiver wire. For me, it would be worth picking him up in the event that he is just something special, that he comes out and he throws 4 touchdowns in his first game against the Bears, which I would hate. But at the same time, you're like, okay, maybe, I don't think he's going to do that against Dennis Allen, but still a quarterback that you want to hold on to and have. I'm not starting him in week 1 by any stretch of the imagination, but I would like to have him on my roster. Not even in a super flex or 2 quarterback league. I'm just talking about straight on, just in case. And I hate to do the thing about trade bait or whatever. The thing is, typically when I'm drafting a quarterback, I'm taking a quarterback who's going to have some inherent risk because I'm not drafting Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts unless by some miracle those guys get super late in drafts. And listen, some people play in leagues like that where they're like, oh, like the hipster pick, like everybody's a hipster, and like nobody drafts quarterbacks. It'd be like, no. It's usually in our home leagues, there's going to be somebody who's just not as prepared, and they're like, well, I've heard of Josh Allen, so I'm going to take him. Or somebody takes it in the first round. I've had friends do this where they're like, hey, I just know that Josh Allen's going to consistently put up points, where CeeDee Lamb and CMC and these guys every year always seem to falter or somebody like that falters, and I'm like, I get it. Like if you draft well at the end, fair enough. But if I'm in a situation where I ended up with a tier, even if I ended up with Baker Mayfield, who I would feel confident with, but I would still be like, I'm still going to have JJ McCarthy
or Patrick Mahomes.
That's where Patrick Mahomes. Yeah,
Patrick Mahomes' fantasy has been on a decline for the last 3 years, and I'm like, his name still rings bells. Like I've had him go in second rounds of my home leagues, and I'm like, you do not take a quarterback there, but hey, I'm gonna mind my business. You do you. But in a situation of that happening, you take a Patrick Mahomes rather too early. Falling back on a JJ McCarthy might literally be the savior of your roster. It might be savior of your team, because you could end up with a Patrick Mahomes of late of last year, and you're not getting the touchdowns. You're not getting the rushing upside with him. These are things that are very crucial to your quarterback, your QB1 in these 1 QB leagues, because they have to be your start and forget unless it's bye week or injury. So if you're sitting here with a Patrick Mahomes, you're a little unsure, or a Baker Mayfield, you're unsure, where Baker's had more offensive coordinators than I've had girlfriends rank in my entire life. It's insane. So looking at that, you need a safety net.
Yeah. This is if I don't have a prom date, can I go with you? Type of situation. The only problem with guys like Patrick Mahomes and this happened with CJ Stroud last year, is where they're playing and they're not playing bad. They're just not putting up fantasy points. Like CJ Stroud wasn't like bad last year. And there were games where he would throw for 220, but only 1 touchdown. And you're like, do I bench this guy? Because he's playing well and they're good, but what do I do? And so then you would have, Patrick Mahomes, and you're like, oh God, he's good. But is it really working? Is it not? Oh man, it's so tough. So you almost paralyze yourself by having 2 decent quarterbacks. But I do remember a couple of years ago, back when Aaron Rodgers was still decent, and I had Aaron Rodgers and I had Herbo the year that he broke. It was his rookie season when he got into that game against the Chiefs and started blowing up. I had drafted Herbo just for this sort of reason. And it came to be like that thing of like, you had to just at some point pick a quarterback and roll with it. And eventually I was able, and again, I always say like, you're never trading a quarterback. But one of my friends, and if you remember Herbert's rookie season, there was a big name quarterback who got hurt, but I can't recall who it is offhand. But it was one of those situations where I was making a trade with somebody and I said, you can pick either quarterback. I just need them off my roster because they're both good. And it was like, oh, I'll take, I know you don't like the Packers, so I'll just take Rodgers. You're like, okay, or whatever it was. It could end up being one of those situations. I feel confident in with him. And I was looking. Oh, so tier 4. I'm so sorry. We also have Geno Smith and Aaron Rodgers in this. Sorry, they cut off on my page. Those are 2 decent guys, but I did want to talk about this one so that we could cut this off and put it on our Titans channel. The fantasy value of Cam Ward is one that I'm really intrigued with, and almost the same conversation we're having with JJ McCarthy. And if somebody snipes JJ McCarthy from me, which is probably going to happen now that we've been talking about this. Cam Ward is another player who, for me, in this tier of these guys, I think Bryce Young kind of falls into this mix as well.
Yes.
But you're right. With Cam Ward, I'm not saying he's going to go out and be Jaden Daniels. However, I do believe he can have a similar type situation to what Caleb and Drake May had last year, where they're like, or Bo Nix.
Yeah.
I feel like he can follow those guys. Jaden Daniels' rookie season might be unattainable. Cam Ward could certainly come in and have a season like Bo Nix and Caleb Williams and Drake May, and could be somebody who saves your fantasy season.
Yeah. I definitely agree. And like at first I was a little hesitant early in like best ball drafts. And like, again, this is just like start and forget. Like you don't have to set your lineups, but still I'm trying to think of those high peak weeks that he could possibly have. There's going to be a defense out there that's going to be trash, and Cam Ward's going to go out there and light it up. But on a consistent basis, this is what worries me, is about the weapons around him. I'm not too sure about that wide receiver room. I mean, Tyler Lockett's on the back end of his career. Alec Ayumanor, he's a guy that I'm really excited about, but I don't know if he locks up that, starting position as their X. You obviously have Calvin Ridley there, and there's been a lot of hype around him and about, Calvin Ridley is a wide receiver 1, but we haven't had the Calvin Ridley wide receiver 1 since Atlanta. So it's like, I don't know what the disconnect there is between, between that Titans offense and Calvin Ridley, but Cam Ward comes in as like this wild card. Like he has, like, again, I like to compare quarterbacks and their qualities. Like he has that Patrick Mahomes awareness in the pocket. I know we all saw him stand straight up in the pocket at Miami and then launch one downfield and find the completion and find his target. These are football IQs that I look for, where you have the effort ball that Josh Allen had his first couple years in the league. Cam Ward has that. That's the downside. Know your league settings. Is it -2, -4 on those interceptions? Because he's a rookie. That's going to happen. Mistakes are going to happen. Look at Drake May. 10 interceptions, but he had 15 touchdowns. These mistakes in the ranges of the outcome for Cam Ward to have this fantasy season. So I say it like this, Rank. I'll take him as my QB2 because I'm a guy in one quarterback leagues. I need a QB2 just in case. I need that just in case if it's JJ, if it's Bryce Young this year, if it's Cam Ward, whoever the case may be. I need that just in case. If they do show some life, I can plug them in on the bye week and still have 20 points on a Sunday because I made that decision in August. So I like Cam Ward's fantasy outlook overall. I'm just not in as stamping him as a QB1 that you could rely on every single week. That's the only issue for me.
100%. I think that's a fair assessment. And even our producers who are huge Titans fans would probably agree with that. Like it's one of those
I try to be nice.
No. But I think for upside, and ever since I went on with the Orange Bowl boys, like this was the thing. I went on to this podcast with the Orange Bowl boys to talk about Cam Ward, and I was doing my mock draft with a twist, and I was still trying to figure out how I liked Cam Ward as a prospect. And they're like, I'm like, give it to me straight. Of the quarterbacks of the last 3 years, where would you have them? And they're all to a man, like above Jaden Daniels. And I'm like, well, thank you for giving me a fair assessment. But as I watched him, I really liked him. And I like to go back and watch him play games as opposed to like breaking down film. And looking back at that game against Cal, like just some incredible things that he did. I truly believe this Titans team can be a real fun bunch. Calvin Ridley being peppered with targets is going to be huge. We'll talk about that when we talk about the wide receivers. Calvin Ridley. So Calvin Ridley is one, and I'll just give you a sneak peek, is a guy that I absolutely want because I feel like he's going to be peppered with targets. The ghost of Tyler Lockett should be enough to kind of open it up for him a little bit too. He doesn't have to be the Tyler Lockett of old, but if he can run down the field, I think that'll suffice. And they could still benefit from some things, but I like Cam Ward, and again, if I miss out on, I still have him below Bryce and JJ as my safety nets. Yeah. If I end up with Cam Ward as my QB2, even in a single quarterback league, I'm leaving with a second quarterback, and it's probably going to end up being some JJ, Bryce Young, or Cam Ward. I love the upside of all those guys. And as we're sitting here, I'm looking at the time. Oh gosh, we're going over. But in any event, let's do. I'm just going to run through the names because you don't need to know them. For tier 5, as we're getting granular here. As you see, I'm not trying to be cute. I don't know who the quarterback of the Giants is going to be, or the Browns, or who's the other one? The Colts. Those are situations to avoid. And then the last one's the Saints quarterback. So you're like, who's that guy at 32? That's the presumed. I could have put QB Saints there as well. Nobody really to worry about, nobody to talk about it. We're not going to waste our breath breaking down what Russell Wilson could mean. Although I really wish, and again, we'll talk about this with the wide receivers, if it would have been Jameis Winston with Malik Neighbors, I might have made I might have made the argument that Malik Neighbors was going to be the wide receiver one.
Yes.
This year.
On board for that 100%. Definitely. If it was Jameis Winston and he was the captain of the ship and it was no Russell Wilson or even a Jackson Dart, I would be on Malik Neighbors as a top 2 pick in drafts.
Yeah. But we're going to be talking about that more as the week continues to progress. We'll hit you with the running backs, then wide receivers, and then the tight ends as we get you ready for your fantasy football drafts, whether you're doing the Scott Fish Bowl this weekend or actually the Scott Fish Bowl kicked off for a lot of people on Monday. So we might be too late. But for anybody who's still doing live drafts, and of course your home leagues are probably getting geared up and ready to go, we'll be here to help you get sorted and get you started on your fantasy football 2025 season. Want to thank you for allowing us to be a part of it. So Laquan, do you have any words of wisdoms before we check out of the quarterbacks?
Oh man, listen, man, know your league settings. That I just pound the table for that. I've seen so many people go in the draft blind, and then it's already the third round, and they asking questions like, "Oh, wait, what kind of league is this?" Like, no, no,
Yeah.
no,
Don't be
just
that guy.
come in the door knowing what's going on.
All you have to do is print out 4 sheets of paper, know your league settings, and you're going to be fine. Just don't overindulge when you're sitting out there and doing it. But in any event, thank you so much for joining us. We'll have other previews dropping this week, or if you're 4 weeks out and you're like, oh gosh, I didn't realize you guys did this. Check back in because I might have changed my mind on Dak Prescott, but still, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it. And for Laquan, I'm Adam, and Sammy, let's go ahead and play us out.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time.